So we are going to talk about applications that require quadratic equations, which means that we are going to have word problems. We are on page 5 of your notes. So just remember, we learned a few days ago about consecutive integers. So let's just remind ourselves of what happens when you have consecutive integers. If they're just regular consecutive integers, you are just going to take your variable, whatever it is that you called your number, a in this example. To go to the next consecutive integer, I'm just going to add 1, and then go to the next one after that, I'm going to add 2. Now remember, for consecutive even integers, if the first integer is b, for example, I have to skip over the 5 to get to the 6, so I have to skip one number to get to the next consecutive even integer. So that would be b plus 2, and then the one after that would be b plus 4. Okay, and then same thing with the consecutive odd integers. Remember, you have to skip a value to go from 5 to 7, so you're going to add 2 because 7 is 2 away from 5, and then I'm going to add 4. Again, don't let the fact that they are consecutive odd integers confuse you into thinking you should do c plus 1 and c plus 3. All right, so we are going to apply what we learned about solving consecutive integer problems to quadratic equations. Now, you guys know how to solve a consecutive integer problem. You also know how to solve a quadratic equation. So now we're just going to put it all together. So because there is a word problem, of course, I want you to underline or highlight key information. So find 3 consecutive positive integers, that's very important, such that the product of the second and the third added to the first equals 47. So I have 3 consecutive integers, which means that I need to write out 3 let statements. So I'm going to say let the first positive consecutive integer equal x. Now, it doesn't say that they're even or odd, so my next one is going to be nice and easy. I'm just going to say let the second positive consecutive integer equal x plus 1. And then lastly, I'm going to do my third one exactly the same. So let the third positive consecutive integer equal x plus 2. All right, then I'm just going to write exactly what it says. Find 3 consecutive positive integers such that the product, which means multiplication, of the second and the third. So I'm going to take my second integer, which is x plus 1, and my third integer, which is x plus 2, and I'm going to multiply them. Added to the first, so I'm going to add x, because that's the first one, equals 47. Now that I've set it up, all I need to do is go through and solve it. So let's go ahead and solve this problem. Okay, so go ahead and distribute the x to everybody in the blue set of parentheses. So you end up getting x squared plus 2x, and then distribute the 1 through, so you get plus x plus 2. Copy down this plus x, and that all equals 47. So then I'm going to combine all of my like terms, so I end up getting x squared plus 4x, because I combine the 2x, the x, and the x, plus 2 equals 47. Subtract the 47 from both sides, you end up getting x squared plus 4x minus 45 equals 0. Okay, now that I've gotten it all on one side, I can go ahead and factor my expression on the left side, so I end up getting x plus 9 multiplied by x minus 5 equals 0. I used 9 and 5 because 9 times negative 5 is negative 45, and 9 plus negative 5 is 4. Then I can go right to my t-chart, so I get x plus 9 equals 0, and I also get x minus 5 equals 0, which means that x equals negative 9 and x also equals 5, which means that my answers are going to be negative 9 and 5. Now, be very careful. Go back and revisit what the question is asking you to find. I know it's a lot smaller, so look on your paper. It asks you to find 3 consecutive positive integers. These integers must be positive, which means that negative 9 is not a possible answer. It narrows down my answers and tells me that negative 9 does not work, which means that my 3 answers are going to be x, which is 5. So my first answer is 5. My second answer is 5 plus 1. So my second answer will be 6. And my last answer will be 7. So my 3 consecutive integers are 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so in question number 2, it's a slightly different problem. This time it's a geometry problem. Similar method, we need to set up our let statements. Because it's a word problem, please underline or highlight key information. The length of a rectangle is 16 more than twice the width. If the area of the rectangle is 40 square inches, find the dimensions of the rectangle. Dimensions are just the length and the width. So that's what we're asked to figure out right here. We're going to find the dimensions. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out how many things do I not know. There are 2 things I don't know. I don't know the length and I don't know the width. And it says the length is 16 more than twice the width, which means the length is based on the width. So I have to know the width before I can figure out what the length is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a let statement for the width. So I'm going to say let the width equal any variable you want. I'm going to call it W. Then I'm going to write another let statement for the length. So let the length equal, I'm not going to use a different variable. I'm actually going to use the same variable, but I have information about the length based on the width. It says it's 16 more than twice the width. So I'm going to write out twice the width first. So twice the width is 2W. And then I'm going to add 16 to it because it's 16 more. All right. Then I'm going to use the area formula. The area formula says that the area is the length times the width. I know what the area is. The area is 40, so I'm going to replace area with 40 equals the length, which is 2W plus 16, multiplied by the width, which is W. So now all I have to do is go through and distribute this W to everybody. So I end up getting 40 equals 2W squared plus 16W. Now what I need to do is I have to get everything on one side. So I'm going to subtract this 40 from both sides right here. So I end up getting 0 equals 2W squared plus 16W minus 40. Now all I need to do is go through and factor. The first question you always ask yourself whenever you factor is there a GCF? Is there a GCF between 2W squared, 16W, and negative 40? Yes, there is. The GCF is 0. The GCF is 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2. I end up getting W squared plus 8W minus 20. Now I need to see, are there 2 numbers I can multiply together to give me 20, but also add up to give me 8, and those numbers do exist. It's possible. I'm going to use 10 and 2. So I'm going to copy the 0 down. I'm going to copy my GCF down. Do not forget that because some people are forgetting it. And then I'm going to put a W here, a W here. I'm going to put a 10 here, a 2 here, and it's going to be a positive 10 and a negative 2. So then I go ahead and figure out what my different factors are going to be. I set them each equal to 0. My first one is just going to say 2 equals 0. That one doesn't work, so I just cross it off. My next one is going to say W plus 10 equals 0. That's a plus sign. W plus 10 equals 0. So that means W equals negative 10. And then my last one's going to say W minus 2 equals 0. That's supposed to be a 2. Sorry about that. So that means that W equals 2. Now, we are talking about the width and the length of a rectangle, which means that I cannot use this negative 10 either because there's no possible way that the length of a rectangle could be negative 10. So I'm going to reject that answer as well, which means that W can only be 2. So then I'm going to go right back into my let statements up here, and I'm going to fill in how much each dimension is. So if the width is W, it just means that the width is plain and simply 2 inches. Okay? And then I'm going to write a similar, or I'm going to figure out what the length is. The length is 2W plus 16, so it's 2 times 2 plus 16. So I get 4 plus 16, which means that the length is 20 inches. Which should make sense to you, because if the width is 2 and the length is 20, the area would be the 40 square inches, which is what we want. All right, in number 3, I have a slightly different problem, something that you guys really haven't seen that much of before. So we're going to go over this problem and hopefully it'll make sense to you. So number 3, if the ratio of the width to the length of a rectangle is 3 to 5, and the area of that rectangle is 735, I'm asked to find the length and the width of the rectangle. So before we move on, I just want to talk really quickly to you all about what it means to have a ratio be 3 to 5. So that means that when in simplest form, the ratio between the two numbers will be 3 to 5. So for example, if I have 6 to 10, that is the same thing as a ratio of 3 to 5. So the reason why this works is because I multiplied 3 and 5 by a common factor, and that is 2. So another example would be a common factor of 4, for example, would give me a ratio of 12 to 20. That's the same thing as 3 to 5. But we don't know what that common factor is, so the ratio is going to be 3x, we're going to call the common factor x, to 5x. All right, so that means that when I write my let statements, they're going to say let the width equal 3x, and then I'm going to say let the length equal 5x. Now remember, the area of a rectangle would be the length multiplied by the width, so I'm going to take the length, which is 5x, and I'm going to multiply it by the width, which is 3x, and that's going to equal the area, which I know, which is 735. So now all I have to do is go through and multiply my two numbers together, so this ends up giving me 15x squared, do not forget the squared, equals 735. So then all I have to do is divide both sides by 15, and then I end up getting x squared equals 49. I could get the 49 on the opposite side, or because it's just an x squared right here, I can square root both sides, and I end up getting x equals, don't forget, it's plus or minus 7. But we're talking about length and width again, dimensions of a rectangle, which means that the negative 7 won't work, which means that the only value that I'm going to look at is 7. This does not necessarily mean that this is my final answer. That's just the final value that x could be. Now I have to go back into my let statements up here and use my let statements to figure out what the length and the width are. So if I were to do the width, it would be 3 times 7, which means that my width is 21 units. Okay? And then, same thing with my length, it would be 5 times 7, which means that my length would be 35 units. Plug it into your calculator, figure out what 21 multiplied by 35 is, and you should end up getting 735.